Well, hello there. We have been waiting for you. Hello, I'm Kiyaana Cox-Jones, and welcome to the Creative Soul Sanctuary. I'm so happy that you were able to join me wherever you're listening or watching from. I'm so grateful that you are in my creative sanctuary. I am a creative soul. At the heart of who I am a creative. I was created to create, and I use my gift to do just that. Today, you are in for an amazing treat. Today, I have a mentor. She was a professor. She's been so many things in my life and has been transformative in how I use my creativity in a restorative way. And I took her class during the time in which I was really going through grief and trauma. And all of the classes that I've taken with this amazing woman has helped to shift the way I see creativity and the way in which I help and connect with others and their creativity. But before we get started and we bring her in, I wanted to take an opportunity to stop and have a power moment. Now, I know that you've been busy. You've been running around. You've been doing a lot because I've been on vacation. I've been doing many things and holding space for many people. But I've often find peace in stillness. And so I want to give you that opportunity because if you are creative, then your mind is always running. Your mind is always thinking. You're always coming up with some new idea. And I want to give you a gift, the gift of stillness, the gift of taking care of yourself in this moment. So let us start. You can soften your gaze, put your feet on the floor. Now, if you are driving listening to this, don't you hit that gas too hard, okay? I want you to relax yourself. So if you're driving, just begin to wiggle those shoulders, stretch that neck, and let's begin to center ourselves. We're going to take a deep breath in on 2 and we release on 4. And believe it or not, this particular breathing method came from the woman that you are about to meet today. I use it in my own personal life, and I use it when I'm working with creatives in creative spaces. All right, take a deep breath in for 2. 1, 2, and release on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, sit with yourself. You are more than enough. You are adequate. You are chosen. You are amazing. Deep breath in for 2. 1, 2, out for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Next, we're going to do in for 3 and out for 6. This time, when you are exhaling for 6, I want you to think about barriers that are standing in the way of you being present with your creativity and being present in your spiritual growth. Deep breath in for 3. 3, and out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. You can and will overcome those barriers. Sometimes it takes being a part of a community. Sometimes it takes being strategic and really thinking about how you show up. In for 3, 1, 2, 3, and out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You are welcome into this brave space. This is a brave space for you to listen, for you to learn, for you to be still as a creative. You are welcomed in this space. God loves you and appreciates you so much that he would carve out this podcast so that you can have alone time to be still, to hopefully this podcast allows you to really focus on that project by doing the inner transformation work. And we'll do about 10 seconds of silence. This time, when we take an inhale on 3 and release on 6, just release on 6 with a sound. And think about where that sound, where you feel in your body, where that sound is going to resonate from. For me, it's in my chest today. I've had a lot of lovely moments that have caused so much joy. Deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, and out on 6. Good stuff. Now, if you're doing that alone at home, or if you're doing it with your ensemble or your cast or with a group at work, there's also in for 4 and out for 8, and then in for 5 and out for 10. And what's most important is that the exhale is longer than the inhale. All right, that's our power moment for today. And so I want to share with you this amazing person. Her name is Dr. Frida Rundell. Dr. Frida, come on in to the Creative Soul Sanctuary. Join us. Good morning or good afternoon or wherever you are listening to this. Hello, Dr. Frida Rundell.
Yes, it's Frida to you. Wonderful. You are
Thank you.
such a blessing. Absolutely.
I'm grateful for you, Frida.
Yeah.
So, Frida, before we get started, we have community agreements here, and I want to share them with you. I always share them with those who are watching and or listening. Our community agreements are simple. The first one is that we listen to understand and we don't listen to respond right away. And I know that, Frida, that's one of your things that you talk about, listening and the power of that. Is that okay to be agreement for us today, Frida? Good. For those of you who are also listening, you're new to this, community agreements are a way that if we are in community, we are agreeing to how we're going to work together and how we're going to build in our relationship and what this brave space looks like. And I often say, if you would like to add to the community agreements, go ahead and send me an email or post something in the comment because you are a part of this community as well. The other community agreement, Frida, is that everybody is a creative. And some people don't agree with that, Frida. They're like, no, I didn't say everybody is a singer or a dancer or an actor, but everybody is a creative. That's one of our community agreements. Are you okay with that, Frida?
Absolutely. Yes.
Good. The next thing is that we value the power of laughter. And I just had a really great dinner with you where we laughed so hard, Frida, that it gave me such joy.
I had a belly laugh and it was a rarity. Thank you.
You are welcome. You are welcome. So thank you for that, Frida. And then our last community agreement is like a twofold. It's the accept and expect non-closure, but it's also this idea that in this space, we honor God in this space. And you know me, you and I have been in community together. And so I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of those community agreements. And thumbs up, we're good to go, Frida. Good to go. Frida, before we get started and we dig into, because I know people are like, oh, just go right in. We want to dig right in. Frida, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are? And you do have it's new to the people, but it's not new to me, a new book that has come out that I have highlights and I'm writing all over it. But can you tell us about who you are and about your book? And then you can kind of segue into how we met.
Well, yes, I'm Frida Catherine Rundell. And I always thought my father had a spelling problem because it was Frida with like in Friday without a Y.
Got
But
it.
then I found out that Frida is Scandinavian for peace.
Wow.
And I embraced it. So my creativity is really playfulness in inspiring others. There's a really deep gift of respecting, a deep respect for our emotional connectivity.
Mm.
we have, but also for the natural world, despite human beings' arrogance about it.
Mm.
And so for me, there's a beautiful quote that Omar Bradley actually gave once. And he was a general in the army after the Second World War. And he said, you know, ours is a world of nuclear giants and ethical infants.
Mm.
We know more about war than we know about peace, more about killing than we know about living.
My goodness.
We have grasped the mystery of the atom and yet rejected the Sermon on the Mount. And so for me, when I embrace this word peace, I realize my mission is to inspire people to their potential, to their affective, emotional potential, that they can be one with the earth and one with their creator. So how did I meet you? I met you in a course, yes. And you sparkled, and it was just beautiful to see. I always say students find the right teachers at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
I know I did, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found you at just the right time, Frida. And what you do so well, Frida, you are an amazing listener. And it was during the class, the course. So I met Frida during my master's program at IIRP, the International Institute for Restorative Practice. And it was in the compassionate witnessing class that I was like, I am not a great listener. Frida, I'm telling you, I was like, oh my goodness. That while people were talking, I was already coming up with my next thing I wanted to say. And I also realized that's also a reminder of what my relationship with God was like, that I was always talking, I was always wanting an answer, and I didn't truly slow down enough to listen. And it was a few months after my mom had, my mother passed in that July, and by February, I was taking one of Frida's classes. And that's when I learned how to be a good listener. So Frida, when you think about like listening and the work, just the work that you do, period, and who you are, and I know you love music, Frida, what song comes to mind, Frida? Like what song comes to mind when you think about it?
Well, there are a couple of songs, there are quite a few, but one of my most beautiful ones is How Great Thou Art. When I, in awesome wonder, consider all the world thy hands have made, when through the woods and the forests I wander and I hear the birds
Mm.
sing, and I look down from lofty mountains and their grandeur and know this is a miracle for me, how great thou art. And even, you know, my late husband, I would play the piano, and he would always sit in the living room and applaud. And I said, no, I don't need applause. Go and sit
Mm.
in the other room and listen. And he would go and sit in the other room and listen. And I said, all I want you to do is be still and absorb it. And so when he actually died, he died at home. I had hospice at home. And it was beautiful because I played How Great Thou Art. And it was just such a beautiful feeling to know he and I enjoyed it. He loved certain groups singing it, but, you know, in harmony. But it was something that really we both connected with. And for me, those transitions from life to death are really transitions. And there are beautiful transitions if we can be able to embrace them in our creativity and realize it is another passing, another space. It is not the end of our lives. Our spirit carries on. And I remember even writing a poem for him that day that he died. And it was I called it used to be, I would get up at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go for my morning walk. And he would kind of arouse and look at me and say, oh, just give me 15 more minutes. And then he'd sleep until 11 o'clock. And I didn't mind because I'm an early riser and I work. But I remember when he was ready to die, I had given 2 classes on the Sunday morning, and it was the 8th of August, 3 years ago. And I saw his breathing was very erratic, and I knew he was ready to go. And when I went up to him, I just hugged him and I said, Michael, your body is crumbling, but your spirit is ready to go on. Leave this world. Go and meet your mom. Go and meet your dad. Go and meet your uncle who had a speech impediment. He thought, but meantime, he was always drunk. Go and meet them. I am giving you permission to die. I love you very much. And 15 minutes later, he was gone. And so it caused me to write this poem called Just 15 Minutes More, is what you would say each morning. The warmth and feel of your touch makes troubles float away like dust. Yet when the morning sunlight appears and the magical motivation arises, my beloved lies sound asleep, mumbling and thumbling. Just give me 15 more minutes. Let your soul move on to the rock and roll melodies you so cherished, leaving the physical body that ached and pained. In the end, beloved, you have left some unique stories behind. As a groom, you were married to the amazement and curiosity. Your sense of humor was never ending with, did you know? Yes, Dad, I'm sure you're going to tell me. You embraced the world with open arms. You made the most of every situation. Skiing, boating, fishing, flying, engaged trains, reading, and not forgetting, you were a foodie of note. Oh man, those raw oysters, I can see where they're from. You did not simply visit this world we're in. You engaged and challenged it all the way, never failing to be thankful. Letting go has not been easy. Rest, my beloved, rest. You have earned your entry into another world. I will miss your willingness to live life to its fullest. Give me just another 15 more minutes.
Frida, thank you so much for sharing that.
And these are transitions, you see. And sometimes we're so scared of them because we don't embrace that creativity of ourselves and what our Maker has made of us, with us, and for us. So for me, grieving is a process within ourselves of letting go. Mourning is a process where we actually work with community in acknowledging the reality of any loss. So it's different. Grieving is going through the sad, mad, bad, glad feelings and finding that meaning. But we need community that can help us embrace that loss.
Frida, do they happen simultaneously? That grieving, are there some grieving intrapersonally and mourning communally?
It can happen separately, but it also can happen in a community that can care. You think of animals. I mean, animals, I've seen it When a dog is dying, it'll go outside. The next thing I see, the other dogs have come just to stand around. That's the grieving process of being sad. I see the horse coming too. And I mean, it's amazing to see that the animal kingdom have the same processes if we can recognize that we need to be sad. And in that moment, when we have a memorial, we can laugh at the funny things. That's the glad, the mad, sad, bad, glad feelings we can share. But some people block it. And that's the problem, because we've separated death and dying from the home.
Mm. Okay, Frida, explain more.
It's an apartheid. Oh, I come from South Africa. This is an apartheid when we separate the humanity and the process of dying from where in the olden days they used to have the person who's died and they would come around. You know, I served in South Africa when I was working with paramedics. And when I first started to teach them, it was very interesting.
Hmm.
They said, Frida, you come on the response unit with us.
Mm.
That's where practice and theory have to come together, just as mourning and grieving have to come together. And on the day that I went, I had to go through protocols to go on the response unit with them. We had 2 deaths that night. And I watched these paramedics, these first responders, how they responded. The first death was a gentleman in a rural area, and the community, the Black community, wailed and cried around and made a noise. And so we stood with the person who had died, waiting for the ambulance to come and take him away. And once it was taken away, they all just followed and sang as the hearse took the body away. Do you see the jubilation? This was a spirit, this was an energy, but they could wail and they could mourn, they could grieve at the same time.
Yeah.
The next 3 hours later, we were called to another one where it was this one was a Black person who died, but the next one was an Indian person, and he died in the home. And all the people came and quietly walked around and sobbed. There was no wailing, but it was a different type. They were showing their respect, but they were walking around respectfully and just praying as we took the body away. So for me, because people go and die in the hospital or die somewhere else, we lose that ability to have that affect, which is the grieving, the mad, sad, bad, glad feelings. And we're separated from it.
Yeah.
And then we have the memorial, which is a huge, big, decorative show.
You're right. And we
So,
can't really grieve there either.
no, and I've just been dealing with a young girl who 2 years ago, her mother died just suddenly. She'd gone to school, she came back, and she said everybody was so obsessed about her and looking after her that she didn't have time to grieve. 2 years later, I am helping her grieve. This last week was her 2-year anniversary of her mother, and she has not grieved yet. What do we do? I give her some pictures. She picks out pictures. I said, let's make a booklet. And I said, this is for you to write and talk to your mom. And there was a beautiful picture of a woman and a child in a garden, and she chose that. And I said, just write a little message, and you can then keep it and maybe write any more. And the next thing she started writing, and she wrote. And I stopped. I realized I gave her 10 minutes. We had total silence. She was totally absorbed. It was the most beautiful message she gave to her mother. I said, you are a writer. She says, yes, I am. I said, value that and keep writing to your mom.
So in
She
the
needed
process,
to grieve, but there were too much community putting their needs onto her. And one of the major things, and when I was working in South Africa, my students were working in a children's home where we had 240 children under 2. And 70% of them were orphaned children because of AIDS. These kids would cling. But it was interesting in terms of the one group in the group home that they started to try and work with. And these were older children, not in the children's home, but in a group home that had been orphaned due to AIDS. And my students wanted to help them grieve. And they would come back and say, they don't want to do what we want to do. I said, but it's what you want to do. It's not what they need. I said, have you ever asked them, what do they need? They came back and they said, they need a fashion show. And they said, but what's a fashion show got to do with grieving? It was their creativity that they needed to explore. They found dresses and outfits that, of course, from the throwaways, and they all decorated them, and they found a compere, and they had a wonderful time doing music to it, paraded these costumes, and that was their grieving process. And that was the mourning. But they had to go through the selection of old clothes and brighten them up and make them look as if they're different. It was amazing.
Frida, so this creativity, and this is beautiful.
Ask them what they need.
So this idea that creativity can live within the grieving and mourning process reminds me of you talking about the idea of sound, and that sometimes sound is movement in the dance, and sometimes sound is the movement of painting or writing, or the creativity of walking, or the creativity of cooking. But people grieve differently. But what I heard you say was that there has to be a process that is within oneself, and then it has to be a communal process. And it makes me think, Frida, that, well, one, there were only 2 times that I engaged with any kind of sound. It was when I saw her in the morgue, and then when I saw her at the funeral in the casket. After that, I silenced myself. I did not give myself any sound. There was no interpersonal experience until I got to that class. And then the big part, which I know you know all about, was that I did not have community because I moved to Virginia. And in Virginia, people really didn't know who I was. And that first 2 years of Virginia was in a space that was filled with Trump, very hostile, very traumatic.
Arrogant.
Yes.
Arrogant.
Woo. And so I didn't have community. And in fact, there was trauma added on to the grief. And so I was losing my own interpersonal experience and I wasn't using my creativity because I thought because I was grieving, I couldn't create, when in reality, they coexisted. And I didn't know that. And then I didn't have the community that I needed. And there was an expectation for me to just show up, and I wasn't given the space to grieve from this new community who didn't truly know me until I started. And then I started to meet people here who truly gave me the space. But it makes me think, Frida, of how does trauma create a barrier to the creativity space? And even when, so you already have grief, but then trauma comes in and adds like a whole nother level. What does that look like? How do you push through that, Frida? Because that's where I was. I wanted to grieve so badly. I wanted to grieve, and I couldn't figure out how to. And until I started to do this work with you and the work with my therapist and the work with God. But when racial trauma was added, Frida, I felt like I was going to lose it. And I didn't know how to push forward. And I'm thinking about the person who is experiencing any kind of trauma in their lives and is grieving. And sometimes we think grief is just the loss of a person, but it's the loss of anything. It could be the loss of where you were. I was also grieving missing PA. I was grieving missing my friends. I was grieving the connections I had. So when we are talking about grieving, we are not just talking about the person, a physical person. You could be grieving in the job, or the last season you were in, or the expectation that you had. And so in that process of grieving, then trauma comes along and causes a barrier. What is happening? What do you tell people, Frida, when now there's grief and trauma?
You know, there's an intricate process when our feelings, affective feelings, our emotional feelings come up. They need expression. Somehow they need expression. Now, when you push them down, you will either go into fight or flight, which then compromises your body on the autoimmune system. But when you push it down, that's the trauma. It could be a little trauma, it could be a big trauma. So when harm happens when needs are not met, the need to express the anger, the shame, the bargaining, the madness, the badness of any situation. If you can't express it, it gets buried in the body, not the mind, the body.
My goodness.
And when it gets buried in the body, you as a human being have two options. You have fight or flight. But if it gets too bad, and yours was a continuous one of loss upon loss upon loss, until you got to the racial trauma that then took you to numbness.
Yep.
Now think about numbness. Numbness is a paralysis. It is a fear. It's a being paralyzed and not able to move. Think of a gazelle that has been chased by a cheetah. The cheetah catches the gazelle. It's been in fight or flight. It catches it, and what does the gazelle do? The buck actually freezes. It goes numb. And the cheetah thinks it has already got it, and it drags it along to its den and calls the other part of the tribe to come and eat. But the gazelle then suddenly, the first thing that happens from a freeze state or from a numb state is that the gazelle quivers, it shakes. That's the crying we need to do. It shakes, it convulses. It convulses, and then it breathes. And that's where the breathing, it empties the stomach. If it's in the stomach, it's woo. If it's in the chest, it's ah. If it's in the head, it's bee. And those are the sounds in nature that help us understand when we have to come out of that numb, paralyzed state, we have to have a voice. We have to express it. And I always say there are 3 steps. Relax, and that's the breathing. Soft belly, get it really empty, because you're using your parasympathetic nervous system to relax the body.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is become aware of your body. Where is my sensation? Where is my tension? That's your gift. And if that sensation can talk to you and say, Kiyaana, you need something, listen to it. And the third step is express.
Mm-hmm.
Express it creatively.
Mm-hmm.
Some people need to paint. Some people need to draw. Some people need to write, like that little girl, that 14-year-old that had to start writing, and it was just magic. Another needs to actually voice it. I had a young girl of 10 years old who had never spoken in her life before. She only rocked. Yes, people would put her on the autistic spectrum. She came into my class. The safety that she felt in our class.
Safe and brave spaces. Whew.
Vulnerable in safe spaces. Feeling internally safe, emotionally and externally. And I used to take her along to my choir. And 3 months down the road, without any expectations, she started to sing. She found her voice. She had come out of a frozen state and slowly started to actually express. Do you see? You've got to relax and then become aware, and then only can the expression come. And it's a beautiful process that is so simple, but we as human beings are so arrogant. We make it so complicated. We categorize people. We put them into labels and call them this and call them that. And we haven't recognized what they need.
Ooh, Frida, you said, what I heard you say was, when we go into that fight or flight, that freeze place, fight or flight.
Freeze is different to fight and flight. Fight and flight, you still got energy. But a freeze state means you are paralyzed, you're numb. You have no options.
And which stage is felt in the body, especially with autoimmune?
Autoimmune is particularly experienced when you are constantly in fight or flight. You are anxious all the time. You're wanting control all the time. You're needing to be the planner all the time. And so this need to constantly either be aggressive and fight means cortisol is being shortchanged, not to feeding your body. Because cortisol is an energy. It gets fed to the amygdala, which is just the simple alarm.
Yep.
And that alarm then gets bigger and bigger. And then if you take your hand as the brain and the thumbnails are the amygdala, and the thumb is the short-term memory, that thumbnail gets bigger and bigger and bigger and changes your short-term memory, which is the rest of the thumb. And that causes autoimmune diseases long-term. So people who live under lots of stress and are constantly anxious, I've seen it with very important people in my life who've been exposed to sexual abuse as children, and they've not spoken about it right up until the adult years. And today they live with lupus. There's the autoimmune disease they have got throughout their body. And they're the kindest people and the most beautiful people, but their body has taken a toll. And that's why I say, when you actually can cry and you can breathe and then say, what is my body saying to me? Because your body is keeping the score.
Yep.
The body, and can you ask that body? So if my chest is palpitating, what is my chest saying to me, Frida? What do you need to do for you? That's the need.
Mm.
Children are
Frida.
beautiful because they can do that
Yep.
automatically. We as adults override it with our head thinking.
Yep. Yep. So I have an autoimmune. Well, I've been diagnosed with the autoimmune, so I may not own it like that, but I've been diagnosed with the autoimmune. And Frida, you know this, I've spoken to you about this. And so when I left this very toxic, hostile environment of my former job, and I started working for the International Institute of Restorative Practice, I was so happy. And all was going well. And all of a sudden, I got sick and I had a really bad flare up. And so I go to the doctors, and my the amount of inflammation in my body was extremely high. I was so swollen, my hands, my feet, hard to, and so we decided to take extreme action to make sure that like we get a hold of this. And so we did monthly treatments, and currently in monthly treatments. And there was this, I wasn't safe at the job, and I hadn't found the right community here. And so in that there was so much constant fight, 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 fight. And when I think back to even growing up, my mom had lupus, and just her always having to fight, always having to protect herself. And I won't share all of her stories because they're not mine to always share, but I do know what she shared with me and how she had to protect herself so much from the world and all of the fighting that she had to do. And then me fighting to just be in space with her, to hold space for her, to knowing the things that she was going through, but also that I didn't have the space to release. So that's why theater became a brave space for me at such a young age. It was where I found my voice. I was very introverted and quiet, did not speak much. And then she put me into theater and music, and all of a sudden this new person emerged because I had a space to be able to release the things that I felt, but I couldn't connect it. And for years, Frida, I tried to figure out, why is the presence of the Lord, church and theater, the stage, were the only two places I felt safe. They were the only two places I yearned to be, in church in the presence of God, and I yearned to be on stage, because in that other character, I felt powerful. And I was so angry, Frida, that that was the only place I felt powerful. And I said, there has to be a way to feel this outside of the stage. There has to be a way. And that's what took me, that after undergrad, again, fighting and feeling so inadequate. When I got pregnant my senior year, just feeling so inadequate and feeling like I disappointed people and myself, fighting, fighting, fighting. Then, but when I thought that I was to a space where I was like, okay, I'm in a space where I can figure out what this looks like outside of theater and outside of church. And then my mother dies. My mother dies. And I was like, what is happening? And then I'm in another fight space. Then I moved to Virginia, and I'm in another fight space. Then I try to find community, and then that new community rejects me. And then I'm trying to find a fight space. And I think that people are not aware of what's truly happening to people when they're experiencing trauma and grief, that they don't realize people are constantly fighting, fighting, fighting. And then I get the dream job of my life. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm relaxed, I'm calm, I'm working from home. This is amazing. And I'm sick. And I couldn't understand. And I had your book, and then I had The Body Keeps the Score. And then my prayer time with God, what God said to me was, baby, you have been fighting so long that the moment you tried to get into a peaceful space, your body had kept the score of all the time it had to fight, all the time it had to put up with life and trauma and things, that the one time that I was like, this is it, my body responded. and I could barely walk. My legs were so swollen. I was in such pain. It was it was horrible because I felt like I just got to the space where I felt like I could handle what was happening with mommy. And I felt like I was starting to express myself. And then my body said, I'm exhausted. I am tired.
And what is it saying to you that you need?
It told me, honestly, Frida, that I needed to continuously engage in my gift. And I was doing creativity with my air quotes on as need basis. And I didn't realize that because I am a creative soul, creativity has to be a part of my everyday life. And I had to wake up every morning figuring out, what does it look like in my morning routine? I created a little creative corner, Rita, where it's where I write, where it's where I sing, where it's where I meditate. I found yoga and started doing some yoga, and in there I would be praying, and I started walking, and these guys was not comfortable with that at first, but then in my walking and walking, I would find tunes and come up with songs and come up with creative ideas. I would leave my cell phone. All the busyness of the world was a distraction. I started to put things away. I went on a sabbatical for a whole year from social media and only focused on how am I using my God-given gift every day in my life. Frida, I'm 38, about to be 39 in September. And I'm going to be honest and say the last 2.5 years has been the most peace I've ever had in my life because I've invited God in my life and a way through my creativity. Every day I see him in the nature, in the birds, and the red cardinals that fly to my window and in the kitchen, and my morning writing and my morning worship and getting my children ready in the morning. It's a part of, I didn't know how much I needed to be creative. This whole
You're finding
podcast is because of
meaning.
it.
You're finding meaning.
Yes.
You're finding meaning. So you've worked through the reconciliation processes that are needed for a mourner. You've acknowledged your reality
Ooh.
and your loss. You've embraced the pain of your loss and your losses. You've remembered the people who gave you some gifts,
Mm-hmm.
and you've developed a new sense of identity.
Mm.
And now you're having the support and the meaning coming to fruition.
Yes.
Yes, it doesn't mean the body has taken the toll, and you're having to, it keeps reminding you, Kiyaana, look after me.
Mm-hmm.
I am your champion.
Mm-hmm.
I know when you're not okay, and I
Mm-hmm.
will show you.
Mm.
Listening to me. Keep listening.
Mm.
Beautiful.
Frida, we're coming to the end, but we do this thing called, I thought you would love this. It's creative soul soliloquy. And I do it differently with different people. But the way I want to do it with you is like a compassionate witnessing circle. And we don't have a number of other people. So for those who are watching, because of the work that she does in compassionate witnessing, and that reminds us from the work of Dr. Weingarten that we experience common shock all the time, that we've made it common. We've made it common to see death and killings and to live in constant chaos. It becomes so common that we can no longer compassionately sit and listen to people and hold space for them. And so, because of that, I've done some creative compassionate witnessing circles using body movement, Frida, using creative spoken word. But I want to remind you, and I don't know if you remember this. So one Sunday morning, because Frida does a lot of putting theory into practice. So with Frida, there's going to be a Sunday class where either 7:30 a.m. or 7:30 p.m., you have to be on Zoom and do this work if you're going to try to be a practitioner and get this master's degree. And let me tell you, it was church for me. I was like, this, I loved it. I had an alarm. I still have this alarm set and I need to take it off, Freedom. I still have an alarm set for like 6:59 to wake up for Frida's class because I looked forward to the practice of this work. But this one Sunday, I wake up and we're doing a compassionate witness circle. And Frida's like, Kiyaana, you're up. And I was like, oh, geez. And so essentially, what it is, it's a protocol where one person shares, I think it's for 10 minutes, right, Frida? They share uninterrupted, they share. And we don't get a chance to do that in communities, which is why I love doing this. I'm so glad you taught me this, Frida. They share uninterrupted. Another person is in like the inner circle with them. Then afterwards, that person responds for a certain allotted time of what I heard you say was and how they are compassionately holding space for them and the things that they heard, even the things in between the lines that they didn't say. Then the people on the outside of the circle get an opportunity to share what they heard from a compassionate point of view. Well, at that time, you could share anything. And Frida said, share what's on your heart. And so I shared the story of my mother's death. I'm going to be honest, I did not get through it. I was like I couldn't even get through the whole story, Frida. And then to hear the things that the people were saying, I was like, I said that? Really? That's what you heard? But I remember towards the end, you said, Kiyaana, where do you feel it in your body? And I was like, in my chest and in my stomach. And I was in my chest was like, it was like a heaviness in my chest. And like my stomach felt like there was 50 million butterflies. And you said, all right, we're going to take a deep breath in and you're going to release it with a sound. And I remember releasing it with the sound and it came out like a wailing. It was almost like I wish I had the opportunity to wail like that. And I remember, Frida, a year after that compassionate witnessing circle, my siblings and I took my mother's ashes to Virginia Beach way out. We rented a charter boat and we let her ashes go. And what we could not do at the funeral, alone, just us on this boat, the music was, it was the perfect atmosphere to mourn. We had music. We were all hugging on each other. We were in the middle of the ocean. Her ashes was just floating and just relaxing in the water. And we wailed. We just wailed and cried. My mother's brother, his wife, my siblings, my children, all of us wailed. It was the most beautiful experience ever. And we all couldn't do it at the funeral, but we did it in this private space. And so for this Creative Soul Soliloquy, I would like to attempt at resharing this story about my mother. And Frida does this great thing at the end as a compassionate witness where she's able to articulate what she heard you say, and it comes out in the creative form of poetry or creative writing. And she like sends it to you, and like I have the one from that day, I still have it. And she did this with every person in the class. I was just like, who is this woman and where she's been all my life? Because this is the work that I want to do. And this is creative. And yes, yes. So, Frida, if you would do our own little compassionate witness circle with just us here. And I'm going to share this story and then I'm going to be quiet. So I'll do 5 minutes, Frida, for this. I'll do 3. I'm going to challenge myself to do 3 minutes and you keep me on time. And then I'll be quiet for 2 minutes to let you respond back with what you heard. And then we will breathe together to release. And then I will pray out. And that will be the end of this episode. What do you think, Frida? Shall we do this again?
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay, here we go. And this is the power of storytelling people and giving people space. Whew, here we go. I have my tissue, my little napkin. Okay, Frida, you ready for time to keep me on time?
I'm a bad timekeeper, but yes, I will.
Okay, here we go. On July 11th, my mother called me and said, daughter, I need you to get your husband's phone. I need you to record something. And so I did, out of obedience. I got my husband's phone and I began to record, and she began to pour into me and my siblings for about an hour this recording. And I've kept it and it has been a blessing to me. And she began to speak. She told me that she was going to die. She said it, I'm going to die. Your husband needs to come with you because you cannot be alone to see me like this. That was July 11th. Then July 12th, she called me and did another recording where she said some things to me about my creativity. And I just recently listened to that again. July 14th, I woke up. My sister and I were headed to the airport with my husband at Philadelphia Airport. We drive to the airport. We get to the parking garage. I called the doctor in Atlanta, and I said, because he had become like a part of our family. It was midst of COVID and had been communicating with us. My mom had had 2 surgeries by then. And he said, I said, I'm on my way. I just wanted to let you know I'm at the airport. And he said, okay, I need to call you back because something's going on. So I said, okay. Immediately, there was like a gut in my stomach that something wasn't right. Anywho, the shuttle picks us up from the parking lot, takes us to the airport at Philadelphia. We get to the airport, we start unloading. I went to go get my bag, my phone rings. It's the doctor. Dr. Cleveland was his name in Atlanta at the hospital. And if he's listening, I would love to reconnect with him again. But anywho, I answer the phone. My husband says, I'll get the bags. I walk towards the door. And all he says is, I'm sorry, we've done all we can. And immediately I let out a wail, a loud scream. And I forgot that my little sister, who at the time was 13, was behind me. And I turned around and I saw her face, and that we locked eyes and we immediately knew what it meant. And so, to quiet that yell so it wouldn't continue to startle her, I turned around and my husband was like, "What's happening?" And I could not even voice the words. And I said to the doctor, "Please, please, 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 please try again, try again, try again, try again." And he said, "They've been trying. They can't. We've done all we can." And I remember going to stand in the circle go round of the airport, and my sister had slid to the ground outside. My husband's trying to figure out how to hold space for both of us. And then I called my mother's brother, my uncle Lou, and I said, "She's gone." And I said, "Tell me what to do. Do I go to Atlanta? Do I still go? What do I do with my baby sister? What do I do? My brother's not here. What do I do? I don't know how to tell the rest of my siblings." It was like I had the worst secret in the world and didn't know how to tell people. And then he said, "You tell us what you need, what you want us to do, Co. You have now become like the matriarch of this family." And so I turned off my emotions. I felt like the only way I could get through what was required of me next was to turn off my emotions. I went to the front desk at Delta and said, "Hey, can someone, I need a space privately because we were on flight such and such. Go pick my mother up." And we found out she just passed. And these women amazingly took us on July 14th into the back in the midst of COVID in a private room, gave us water. And I told my sister, I remember saying to her, she's gone. And she just wailed in my arms and she said, "Cry. If you cry too, I know it's real because she was your mom too." And we cried there. And after that, I said, "I can't cry anymore." And I got on a plane with my husband and got to Atlanta and laid in the bed numb. And then the next day on July 15th, I walked into this hospital and I told my husband, "I can't go in there." I said, "I can't go in there. I can't see her like this. You go. And if it's not safe, I won't go." And so he went in the room, and like 15 seconds later, he came back out. And I said, "It's too bad." He says, "No, you can do it." And we walked in, and I walked into a room where I saw the body that carried me, the body that rocked me, the body that protected me when people hurt me, the body that sang to me, the body that encouraged me, the body that made me stay up all night long to practice. I saw that body lay still. Ah, my legs felt weak, so they got me a chair. And I remember looking at this body, and my first reaction was to sing over her. So in the morgue, in the hospital in Atlanta, with 2 nurses and my husband, I sang over my mother because that was the only thing I knew to do. And then we left, made all the arrangements to get her home, and the busyness of funeral and holding space for siblings and holding space for my kids and holding space for everybody. I couldn't feel. I turned off what I needed to feel so that I could be present for everybody else. And I got a new job and I moved to Virginia. I thought I would find community. And I thought, okay, I'll get settled and then I'll grieve. And then I was rejected because I was Black, because I was woman, because I had a voice, because I was sent on an assignment. And then I was escorted in and out of school board meetings by the sheriff's office, and then colleagues and people not knowing. I'm not angry with them. I'm angry with the world that we live in that doesn't know how to be kind and hold space for people, to don't know how to welcome people that may look different or have different views or opinions. And I shut down because I couldn't speak. When you're sitting in school board meetings, you're not allowed to respond to people yelling, saying, we don't want her here. How could you pay her? You're not allowed to respond back. I couldn't speak. And so essentially, it reminded me my voice was ripped away. And I sat here in Virginia in deep depression because who I thought I was had disappeared until recently, within the last 2.5 years. And 2 weeks ago, I went back to Philadelphia airport for the first time in 4 years. July 14th, this and next Saturday will make 4 years. I went back to the airport and I stood for a minute because I could see 34-year-old Kiyaana walking and being lost. And Frida, I wanted to whisper to her, hey girl, you're going to make it. And I thought that even in that moment, God knew and saw this version of me. Even in that moment, I wanted to whisper to her. I wanted to whisper to my little sister and say, girl, you about to go off to Howard University. I just wanted to whisper to both of them that they were going to be all right. I wanted to whisper to my husband, like, she's going to be all right, because I knew that he feared, like, I wasn't coming back from this. And in that same airport, I smiled and laughed again because there was a freedom in seeing myself on the other side. There was a freedom in hearing my voice.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So for me, just listening to this is the passing of the mantle from your mother to you. It hasn't been easy. What are you experiencing in your body?
Right now, it's here. It's in my chest. This ironically enough, 2 years ago when we did this, Frida, I felt like I was gonna have like a panic attack, a heart attack 2 years ago. But now, like in my chest, there's such a
Take a deep
peace.
breath in and go, ah.
Oh.
3 more. Deep breath in.
Oh.
Ah.
Oh. This time, Frida, I felt like I released the the grief of me, the version of me that died.
Yes, yes. Not being alone. Your mother acknowledging your creativity. Mom is ready to die. My gut speaks. Doctor calls. I'm sorry. We've done all we can. Your scream was needed. Locking your eyes with your sister. Try, try, try again. What do I do? What do you need? Turn off your emotions didn't help. Those are the little traumas, and then it became a little more. You cried. It felt real, but it wasn't enough. You can do it, Kiyaana. Your mother has passed on the mantle. Singing over my mother, holding space for her transition. Then going straight into holding space for others. And yet, get a new job, get rejected, get escorted, shutting down again. Look where you had to go. Needing to say, I cannot hold space for you in your arrogance anymore. Taking that mantle and saying, hey girl, you're going to make it. Smiling. Freedom. And beautiful. You did it, girl. Beautiful. You did it. Wow.
Frida,
So sometimes there are many things that we just have to hold very precious, and sometimes they're invisible. It's a very special gift that you can never see. But the reason is it came from your mother to you. So whenever you are lonely and whenever you're blue, you only have to hold on to that image of your mother and know she's thinking of you. You don't have to unwrap it. You can just hold that picture tight and know it's filled with love inside.
thank you, Frida. I want to take this opportunity to pray for anyone who may be listening and or watching Frida and I, who you are walking through a season of grief and or trauma that has made you feel like you can't create, that you can't move, that you can't do. And I want you to know that they can coexist. And to be honest, your creativity is the sound that you need to grieve. And so I want to pray, Father God, I thank you for whomever is watching this. I thank you, Father, that you've created an opportunity for them to sit still, to hear, to be able to process what has been happening with them, and for them to take this into a safe and brave space, whether it's with a counselor, therapist, or their mentor, or their pastors, someone who can hold space for them to walk them through what this healing process looks like. I pray, Father God, Lord, that they would find value and voice in their writing, in their movement, as their bodies shift, as their voices begin to speak up, as their voices begin to talk, sing, as they begin to create for that special project at work, that as creativity manifests in their lives, Lord, that you would do exceedingly and abundantly above all that they could ask or think, Lord, and that I pray peace for them, peace that surpasses all understanding, peace that surpasses all that what they think they know and what they've experienced, that you would give them peace, and Lord, that you would remind them that you can use them and still hold their grief. You can use them and they can heal at the same time, that they don't have to feel like they're inadequate, that they've been scarred so much that they can't be used by you, that we are all creatives in every different way, whether it's the engineer, whether it's the person working with tools with their hands, or whether it's the person brainstorming how to the blueprints for the architectural job, whatever it is, in whatever capacity, the mother who's holding space and raising their children, that is being creative in how she holds space for for all of them, the parents who are loving on each other, and the people, the partners who are loving in their marriage, being creative, whatever it is, whomever it is, give them peace, Lord. Walk them through what healing looks like, Lord, and remind them, Lord, that there is a sound to releasing. Even your word declares that the earth began to rumble and thunder when Jesus died on the cross. The earth made a sound. So we too can make a sound and release, and that we don't have to hold it in. And I pray for community. I pray that they have the right community to grieve in, the right community to heal in. I pray that you would send the people to love on them. If you bless us, Lord, we will be blessed. And if you keep us, we will be kept. We're so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for Dr. Frida. I'm so grateful that you brought her all the way from South Africa to be here in America to do this work, and that I would encounter her at just the right time in my life and be impacted in such a way that I can continue the work, continue her legacy, and continue my mother's legacy. And I am forever grateful of the mantle of my mother. And where I was afraid to grab it and hold it before, I gladly welcome the mantle. And thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In Jesus' name, amen, amen.
Amen. We have the blessing.
Thank you, Frida.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much for watching and or listening to us. Dr. Frida is amazing. Please take the opportunity to listen to this podcast, or share it with someone, or watch the video and share this work with someone else. And we know that there's many ways to get through grief and trauma, but here in the Creative Soul Sanctuary, we wanted to share this gift with you. Remember, the curtain will rise on your dream again. I'm Kiyaana Cox Jones. And until the next time, God bless.